The human exploration team had arrived on an uncharted planet, deep in the heart of a star system known for its unwelcoming atmosphere and harsh terrain. The planet, which they had named Xylon 9, was different from any other they had encountered before. It was shrouded in thick, swirling clouds that hid the surface from view, making it seem like a place where no life could possibly thrive. But their scans told a different story. The team, led by Captain Dara, was tasked with discovering new resources and any potential remnants of alien technology that could help humanity advance. They had landed in a vast, desolate plain, surrounded by jagged rock formations that seemed to be centuries old. The air was thin, and the ground was covered in a strange, glowing moss. It wasn't the kind of place that inspired excitement, but it was the kind of place that could hold secrets. And secrets, the crew knew, were their mission. For days, they had scoured the landscape, collecting samples and mapping the terrain, but nothing of importance had surfaced. That was until they stumbled upon something hidden beneath the surface. The discovery was entirely by accident. A sudden tremor shook the ground, startling the crew. They had just finished gathering soil samples when the shaking began. At first, they thought it was another natural disaster, a common occurrence on this unpredictable planet. But this was different. The tremor was not like any earthquake or storm. It seemed purposeful. The crew rushed to investigate. Following the shaking, they discovered an opening in the ground, partially covered by a mass of rock and vines. With little hesitation, Captain Dare ordered the team to break through the debris. As they cleared away the rubble, a strange structure was revealed beneath. It was unlike anything they had seen before, an ancient, triangular shape made of some unknown material, glowing softly with an eerie blue light. The walls were etched with alien symbols that none of the team could decipher, but the energy radiating from it was unmistakable.
"Captain, this is no ordinary structure," Lieutenant Maya said, her voice filled with awe.
"This is alien. It feels alive." The crew gathered around, looking at the structure with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The artifact, if that's what it could be called, stood silent and still, almost beckoning them to interact with it. Its glowing surface seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm, almost like it had a heartbeat. "It's incredible," whispered Engineer Sam, his eyes wide as he stepped closer to the object. "Do you think this could be a remnant of the Xylon civilization? Maybe it's a relic, or a device?" Captain Dara studied the structure carefully, her mind racing. The Xylon civilization had long been considered extinct, their once great cities now only a memory in the star maps. The Xylons had left behind a history of technological marvels, but no one had ever found any of their actual devices, until now. The significance of this discovery could not be overstated. "What do we do?" Maya asked, her hand hovering over the strange artifact. "We have to investigate it." Dara hesitated for a moment, the warning in her gut growing stronger. She had read all the reports about Xylon 9, about the alien species that had once called this place home. The Xylons were known to be a highly advanced species, but they had disappeared centuries ago, and the few records that remained about them were shrouded in mystery and even fear. There were warnings from other alien races, cryptic messages passed down through generations that spoke of a terrible power hidden within Xylon artifacts. They warned against touching anything related to the Xylons, especially objects that seemed to defy the laws of nature. "Careful," Dara said, her voice steady but firm. "We don't know what we're dealing with here. The Xylons might have left this behind for a reason. We don't know if it's safe." But Sam, always eager to learn, wasn't listening. He had already started taking readings with his handheld scanner, completely absorbed by the data flashing on his screen.
"Captain, this is incredible," he said, his excitement palpable. "I'm picking up energy signatures I've never seen before. It's...
Boo! It's off the charts." Despite the warning in Dara's voice, Sam took another step closer to the artifact. I'm going to try to access it. This could be a breakthrough for humanity. Before anyone could stop him, Sam reached out and touched the artifact. The moment his fingers made contact with the smooth, glowing surface, everything changed. A shockwave of energy shot through the air, a pulse that rattled the ground beneath their feet. The artifact flickered with a burst of light, and the entire structure seemed to shift and hum, reacting to Sam's touch. It was as if the object had come to life. "Sam!" Maya shouted, rushing to his side. But it was too late. Sam stood frozen, his eyes wide with astonishment, as though he could feel the energy coursing through him. The artifact's light slowly dimmed, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence. The crew exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what had just happened. "Did he activate it?" Lieutenant Maya asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Captain Dari replied, her mind racing. She didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. Touching the artifact had changed something. The air felt different, charged with an energy that hadn't been there before. I'm fine," Sam said, blinking rapidly as he shook his head. I don't feel any different, but something just clicked."
I can't explain it.
Captain Dara studied him closely, noticing a strange shift in his expression. He seemed more alert, more alive, but there was also something unsettling in his eyes. He had always been quick to embrace new technology, but now he seemed almost too eager. "Let's move back," Dara ordered, her instincts telling her that this was no time to be reckless. "We need to analyze the situation before we do anything else." The team backed away from the artifact, but Sam remained where he stood, still staring at it with a newfound fascination. He didn't seem to want to leave. In fact, he seemed drawn to it in a way that the others weren't. Captain Dara's gut told her that something was happening to him, something beyond just the energy from the artifact. As they returned to the ship to regroup, Sam insisted on staying behind to monitor the artifact further. "I have to study it," he said. "I need to understand what it is." Captain Dara, torn between the desire for answers and the nagging feeling that they were playing with fire, reluctantly agreed to let Sam continue his research. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had just crossed a line. One that might change everything for humanity. Back on the ship, the crew gathered in the command center, reviewing the data they had collected so far. But as the hours passed, something strange began to happen. Sam's vitals began to show unusual readings. His heart rate increased, his body temperature rose, and his brain activity surged. "Captain, we need to check on him," Maya said, concern creeping into her voice. But before they could act, an urgent message came through on their communications console. It was a transmission, weak but clear, coming from deep space. "Don't touch it," the message warned, crackling with static. "The artifact. It is not a gift. It is a curse." The transmission cut off before they could get any more information, but the crew was left in stunned silence. It was a warning they should have listened to earlier. Now, it was too late. They had already touched the artifact, and whatever was happening to Sam was only the beginning. Captain Dara stood in front of the console, her heart pounding in her chest. The alien race that once inhabited this world had warned them, but they hadn't listened. Now, they had to live with the consequences. The quiet hum of the ship's systems seemed to echo in the background as the crew stared at the screen. Captain Dara's mind raced. The transmission had been clear, but it had come too late. They had already made contact with the artifact. They had already activated it. And now, the question remained. What had they unleashed? Sam was still in the lab, staring at the artifact, as if something had taken hold of him. His usual excitement for discovery had turned into something darker, more intense. He refused to leave, telling the rest of the crew that he had to understand what the artifact was doing to him. "Captain, we need to go check on Sam," Lieutenant Maya said, her voice filled with concern. "His vitals are all over the place. Something's wrong." Dare nodded slowly, her fingers gripping the edge of the console. She had never felt so torn. She knew something was happening to Sam. He was no longer the man they had brought to this planet. There was an energy inside him, an energy that seemed to grow with every passing moment. "Let's go," Dara said finally, standing up.
But be careful, we still don't know what we're dealing with.
The team gathered their equipment and made their way to the lab. The ship was quiet, almost too quiet, as they made their way through the narrow corridors. As they entered the lab, they found Sam still standing in front of the artifact, his hands hovering just above its surface. He was completely still, his expression focused, almost trance-like.
Sam!
Captain Dara called softly, her voice breaking the silence.
Sam, you need to step away from it!
He didn't respond at first. His gaze remained fixed on the artifact, his eyes wide and unblinking. The soft glow of the device reflected off his face, casting eerie shadows across the room.
Sam, Maya repeated, her voice firmer this time. You need to come with us.
Your vitals are unstable. We're worried about you. Still, there was no response. Sam's breathing was shallow, his face flushed with a strange intensity. His body seemed to radiate heat, and the glow from the artifact intensified, pulsating in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Something's wrong," Maya muttered under her breath. Captain Dar's eyes narrowed as she studied Sam, then the artifact. The energy emanating from the device had changed. It wasn't just a simple pulse anymore. It was growing stronger, almost as if the artifact itself was feeding on something. Feeding on Sam.
Sam, listen to me, Dara said, her voice softer now. You have to come away from it.
Please. At last, Sam blinked, and his head slowly turned towards her. His pupils were dilated, and there was a faint glow in his eyes. It was as though something was alive in him. Something foreign. A flicker of recognition passed through his expression, but it quickly faded, replaced by something colder. "I can't," Sam said, his voice distant, almost mechanical. "I have to understand it." "It's changing me." Dara's heart sank. She had feared this. She had known the artifact was dangerous, but she hadn't anticipated how quickly it would take hold of one of their own. Sam was no longer the person they had known. He was becoming something else.
Sam, we have to get you out of here, Maya insisted, stepping forward.
"You're not yourself. You're—" But before she could finish, Sam turned back to the artifact, his fingers brushing lightly against its surface. The artifact seemed to respond to him, as if it recognized him. The hum of energy in the room deepened, and suddenly, the ground beneath them began to tremble. "We need to leave," Dara said urgently, her voice rising. "Now!" But it was too late. The entire lab began to shake, and the lights flickered. The artifact's glow grew brighter, blinding them momentarily. Sam's body jerked forward, his hands pressing against the device with newfound strength. "Sam, stop!" Captain Dar shouted, rushing toward him. But Sam didn't stop. His grip on the artifact tightened, and the energy surrounding it surged violently. The crew was thrown back by the force of the shockwave. The walls of the lab groaned and buckled as the pulse of energy grew stronger, filling the room with an overwhelming, suffocating heat. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, everything went silent. The tremors stopped. The lights returned to normal. The artifact dimmed, and Sam collapsed to the ground. "Sam!" Maya cried, rushing to his side. She knelt down, her hands hovering over him. His body was still radiating heat, but his eyes were closed. His breathing was steady, but there was an unfamiliar stillness to him now. Captain Dare quickly checked his vitals on her handheld scanner. Everything seemed normal, but something was off. There was an energy in his readings, something unnatural. "What happened to him?" Maya asked, looking up at Dara, her face pale with worry.
I don't know, Dara said, her voice low. She helped Sam sit up, but he didn't respond.
His body seemed to have absorbed the energy, but it wasn't clear what the long-term effects would be.
We need to get him to the medical bay, Maya suggested.
We'll figure out what's going on there. Captain Dara nodded. Agreed. Let's go. The team carefully moved Sam to the medical bay, where the ship's medical officer, Dr. Tanaka, awaited them. Tanaka was a no-nonsense physician, known for her calm demeanor and quick thinking. She immediately went to work, scanning Sam's vitals and running a series of tests. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Tanaka said after a few moments. She looked up at Captain Dara, her brow furrowed. "His DNA has been altered, but I can't tell how. It's almost like something has been rewritten." Captain Dara exchanged a worried glance with Maya. She had feared the worst, and now it seemed they were facing something far beyond their comprehension. "What do you mean, rewritten?" Dara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "His genetic structure is changing, Dr. Forsyth," Tanaka explained. "It's subtle, but it's happening. Whatever he touched, whatever happened when he made contact with that artifact, it's affecting him at the molecular level." Maya stood silently, her hands clenched at her sides.
Is he going to be okay? I don't know, Doctor.
Tanaka replied. "The changes are unlike anything I've seen before."
But we can't just leave it like this. We need to find out what exactly that artifact did to him.
Captain Dare looked down at Sam, who was now lying unconscious on the medical bed. His breathing had slowed, but his skin still felt unnaturally warm. There was no telling what the artifact had done, but Dara knew one thing for sure. They were no longer in control of the situation. The artifact had taken hold, and it had changed everything.
We need to contact command, Dara said, her voice firm. We need to report this.
"We're not the only ones who need to know about this," Maya nodded, her face grim.
Agreed.
"But what do we tell them? That we touched the artifact? That we ignored the warnings?" "We'll tell them the truth," Dara said, her eyes hardening with determination. "And we'll figure out what to do next. But we have to stay focused. We have to figure out what Sam's going through. We have to understand what that artifact is and what it's doing to him." But as the crew worked to stabilize Sam and analyze the data from the artifact, Dara couldn't shake the nagging feeling in her gut. They had awoken something ancient, something dangerous, and they didn't know how far its influence would spread. The alien race that had once inhabited this planet had warned them. But it was too late. They had already made contact, and now they would have to face the consequences. The ship was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the medical equipment monitoring Sam's condition. Captain Dara sat in her quarters, staring out the window at the desolate planet below. The surface of Xylon 9 appeared calm, but Dara knew that beneath its quiet exterior, something dangerous was stirring. The artifact had done something to Sam, something no one could explain. And as the hours passed, the unease among the crew grew, building into something they couldn't ignore. It had been 2 days since Sam had touched the artifact. Since then, he hadn't spoken much, and his condition seemed to change by the hour. Dr. Tanaka had run every test she could think of, but the results were baffling. His DNA had begun to shift, the changes too profound to be just a simple mutation. It was as though his entire biological structure was being rewritten, at a rate far faster than anything natural. The medical officer was growing more concerned with each passing hour, and even she was at a loss for what to do. Captain Dara's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at her door. She turned, and Maya stepped inside, her expression tight with worry.
Captain, we need to talk, Maya said, her voice low.
Dara nodded, motioning for Maya to sit. "What is it?" Maya hesitated for a moment before speaking. "We're losing him. Sam, he's not the same. Whatever's happening to him, it's happening faster now."
The changes are accelerating. I know, Dara replied, her voice steady but filled with concern.
But there's nothing more we can do for him here. We need answers, and we won't find them if we stay on this planet. Maya sat down, looking exhausted.
I know, but I'm afraid. I've seen him. He's not the same man we brought here. His mind, it's different.
The energy from that artifact, it's seeping into him. And it's not just his body, it's his mind, too. Captain Dara sighed, rubbing her forehead. She had always been a leader, but this situation felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The Xylons had warned them, but the team had ignored the caution signs, driven by curiosity and the thirst for discovery. Now, it felt like they were stuck in a web of their own making, and Sam was the first casualty. We need to figure out what happened to him, Dara said after a pause, and we need to find out if there's a way to stop this before it spreads to the rest of us. Maya nodded. I'm with you. But whatever is happening to him, it's not just physical. He's changing mentally, too. He's becoming more detached. And there's something else. When I try to talk to him, it's like he's listening to something else. Something we can't hear.
Dara stood, looking out the window again.
The night sky over Xylon. 9 was beautiful in its emptiness, but it felt oppressive now. A constant reminder of how far they were from home. The unknown stretched out before them, and with it, the threat of something far worse than they could comprehend. We have no choice, Dara said firmly. We're going back to the artifact. We need to understand it. We need to find out what it really does. Maya hesitated. But Captain, what if it's too late? What if whatever's happening to Sam is just the beginning? We'll deal with that when the time comes, Dara replied. Right now, we need to focus on finding answers.
The crew prepared to return to the artifact. Sam, still under heavy observation in the medical bay, was left behind.
The remaining crew members, Captain Dara, Maya, Dr. Tanaka, and a few others, gathered around the ship's console, reviewing the data from their last visit to the artifact. They had been so eager to understand its potential, but now they were desperate to comprehend its danger. The journey back to the temple was tense, with the crew exchanging nervous glances as the ship descended toward the surface of Xylon 9. The atmosphere was thick with apprehension. Dara, who had always been composed in moments of crisis, found herself battling doubt. Had they made a terrible mistake? Was the artifact the key to something powerful? Or was it a deadly force waiting to be unleashed? As the ship touched down on the barren surface of the planet, the crew stepped outside, their boots crunching on the soft, glowing moss. The temple, now visible from the ship, loomed in the distance, its alien architecture standing as a silent warning. The structure was even more imposing, now that they knew its true significance. The artifact, hidden deep inside, was calling to them in a way that felt almost sentient. I don't like this, Dr. Keppen, Tanaka muttered, her face tense with worry.
There's something wrong here.
I can feel it. Captain Dara turned to her, her face grim.
I don't like it either, but we don't have any other choice.
We have to figure out how to stop what's happening to Sam. The team moved cautiously toward the entrance of the temple. The air was heavy with the scent of ancient dust, and the walls seemed to pulse with an energy that was both unnerving and captivating. They reached the center chamber where the artifact had been, the strange object still resting on its pedestal, glowing with that same eerie blue light. Dara approached the artifact slowly, her hand hovering just above its surface. She had to admit there was something compelling about it, the way it shimmered and hummed, as though it was alive. She didn't know how to describe it, but it felt like the artifact was watching them, waiting for them to make their move.
This is it, Maya said, her voice barely a whisper.
This is what started it all, Dara nodded. We need to understand it, but we need to be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with. Just as Dara was about to reach out and touch the artifact again, a sudden voice filled the chamber, a voice that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. Don't touch it. The crew froze, their eyes darting around, trying to locate the source of the voice. It was the same warning they had heard before, the warning that had come too late. But now, it was different. It was clearer, more urgent. And this time, it wasn't a distant transmission from an alien race. It was right here, in the very air they breathed. "Who's there?" Captain Dara called, her voice steady despite the growing fear in her chest. "Who's speaking?" The voice answered, its tone softer now, almost sorrowful. "You cannot stop it. Once you've touched it, it has already begun." The team looked at each other, confused and fearful. They had heard the warning, but now it was clear that the artifact wasn't just a piece of technology. It was something far older, far more powerful, and far more dangerous than they could ever have imagined. "We've already made contact," Maya whispered, a chill running down her spine. "It's already happening." As the crew stood in silence, the artifact pulsed again, and for the briefest moment, the room seemed to shift. The walls seemed to breathe, and the air grew thick, as though something was moving just beyond their reach. Then the voice spoke once more, softer this time. "You have no idea what you've unleashed. It is already changing you." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. A low, rumbling sound filled the chamber, growing louder and louder, until it seemed to shake the very foundation of the temple. The artifact flickered, its light growing brighter until it was blinding. The crew had no choice but to shield their eyes as the energy surged around them, crashing against them like a tidal wave. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the shaking stopped, the light dimmed, and the air became still again. But something was different. Something had changed. Captain Dare looked around, her heart racing. Sam's transformation was just the beginning, but now the rest of them could feel it too. The artifact had begun its work, not just on Sam, but on them as well. It was rewriting them, changing their biology, their minds, their very essence. "We need to leave," Dr. Tanaka said urgently, her voice trembling with fear. "This place is alive. We're not safe here." But Captain Dara didn't respond. She was too focused on the artifact, her mind racing. The truth was starting to sink in. There was no going back. The artifact had already begun to alter them, and whatever was happening to Sam, it was only a matter of time before it happened to the rest of them too. "We can't run from it," Dara said finally, her voice low but resolute. "We need to face it. We need to find out what it wants.
The crew was silent, each of them realizing the full scope of what lay ahead. They had awakened something ancient, something powerful, and now they would have to find a way to survive it.
But none of them knew if they could. The only thing they knew for certain was that the artifact had rewritten their fate, and there was no turning back. The air inside the temple was thick with the hum of energy. Captain Dare stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the artifact. The crew around her was silent, each of them feeling the weight of the moment. The reality of the situation was beginning to set in. Whatever they had hoped to discover on this mission, they had now found something far beyond their understanding. The artifact wasn't just a relic of an extinct alien civilization. It was alive, and it was changing them, one by one. The tremors that had shaken the temple only moments before had subsided, but the strange, heavy energy still clung to the room. Dara could feel it in her chest, in her very bones. It was a force that pressed against her, urging her to step closer to the artifact, to make contact again. She shook her head, trying to clear the sensation. The voice had warned them. It was already too late. But she couldn't stop herself from wondering what would happen if they tried to reverse it, if they could find a way to stop the changes. "Captain," Maya's voice broke through her thoughts. "We need to leave. This place it's dangerous. Sam's condition is getting worse. We need to get back to the ship." Dara looked over at Maya, her eyes clouded with doubt. Maya was right. Sam's condition had deteriorated ever since they arrived at the temple. His body temperature was rising again, and his heart rate had become erratic. He had started speaking in fragments, his words disconnected, as though he was no longer fully aware of his surroundings. But even with Maya's plea, Dara couldn't tear her gaze away from the artifact. It was as if the very core of the artifact was calling to her, demanding her attention. The strange glow of the object pulsed rhythmically, and for a moment, Dara thought she saw a flicker of movement. Something behind the surface, something that seemed to recognize her presence.
No,
She said firmly, shaking her head.
we can't leave yet.
We don't understand what this is. We need to know what it's doing to us.
Maya sighed, stepping closer to Dara. Captain, this isn't just about knowledge anymore.
Sam is changing. I don't know how much more we can ignore. Dara turned slowly to face Maya, her face drawn with worry. I know.
But we've already crossed that line. Whatever this is, whatever it's doing to Sam, it's already spreading.
If we leave now, we might be sealing our fate without understanding how to stop it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The tension between them was palpable, but they both knew the truth. There was no going back now. If they were going to survive this, they had to understand the artifact. They had to learn what it was doing to them, and, more importantly, how to reverse it before it consumed them all. We need to find out what happened to the Xylons, Dara said, her voice steady but filled with determination. But maybe they left clues, something that can help us understand what's going on. Maya nodded slowly, reluctantly agreeing.
You're right, but we need to be careful.
We don't know what else we're dealing with here. This thing, this artifact, it's beyond anything we've encountered before.
We don't know how much more it can do to us. I know, Dara replied.
But we have no choice. If we stay here, if we don't learn everything we can, we'll be leaving this planet just like the Xylons did, without answers. And I can't live with that. The two of them turned back toward the artifact, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the temple. The other crew members lingered at the doorway, unsure whether to follow or wait behind. They had seen the effects of the artifact firsthand. They had witnessed Sam's rapid transformation, and they feared that whatever was happening to him could happen to them as well. Tanaka stepped forward, her face tight with worry. Captain, we've done all we can for Sam. We need to get him back to the ship. We have more medical resources there. If we don't get him back soon, I'm afraid we won't be able to save him. Dara glanced at Tanaka, then back at Sam, who had been carried to a nearby corner, his condition worsening. His eyes were wide open now, but his expression was vacant, as though his mind had drifted far away. It was as though the person Sam had once been was slipping away, replaced by something else. Dara felt a pang of guilt in her chest. She had been the one to insist on investigating the artifact, and now it seemed to be taking everything from them. It had already stolen Sam, and now it was threatening to take everything else.
We'll get him back to the ship, she said, her voice firm. But we can't leave without answers. I need to know what this artifact did to him. I need to understand what we're up against.
Tanaka hesitated, then nodded.
Fine, but we need to move quickly.
The longer we stay here, the more dangerous it becomes. The crew worked quickly, carefully lifting Sam and preparing to leave the temple.
Dara stayed close to the artifact, her hand hovering just above its surface, feeling the strange energy that seemed to vibrate in the air. It was almost as though the artifact was alive, aware of their presence, and it wanted them to stay. But Dara couldn't shake the feeling that if they remained here much longer, it would consume them as well. They made their way back to the ship, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The journey back was silent, everyone too deep in their own thoughts to speak. The thought of leaving the temple without fully understanding what had happened to Sam weighed heavily on Dara. But there was nothing more they could do. They had to return to the ship. They had to regroup, and they had to find a way to fix this before it was too late. As they boarded the ship and made their way to the medical bay, Dr. Tanaka immediately began running scans on Sam, trying to stabilize him as much as possible. His condition was worse than before. His heart rate was fluctuating wildly, and his body temperature had risen to dangerous levels. Dara stood by, her arms crossed, watching helplessly. She had been the one to lead them here, the one who had insisted on investigating the artifact, and now she was watching Sam slip further away. "We're losing him," Tanaka said quietly, her voice filled with frustration.
I don't know how much longer we can keep him stable. His body is rejecting everything I try.
It's like he's no longer human. Dara's heart sank. She had feared this. The artifact had changed Sam, and now it was changing all of them. They had all touched it. They had all been exposed to its power, and now none of them knew what would happen next. "We need to find out what happened to the Xylons," Maya repeated, her voice steady. "We can't keep guessing. We need to know what they went through. We need to understand how they failed, and how we can avoid making the same mistake." Dara nodded. Agreed. "We'll start by reviewing everything we can find about the Xylons. There has to be something in their records, something that tells us how they dealt with the artifact. We need to learn from their mistakes before it's too late." As the crew worked to stabilize Sam and search for answers, the ship seemed to grow quieter, as if it too was holding its breath. Every crew member was on edge, the weight of the unknown hanging over them like a storm cloud ready to break. No one knew what the future held, but they all knew one thing for certain. They were running out of time. Dara couldn't stop thinking about the warning. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." It echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of how close they were to the edge. Sam was just the beginning. Whatever the artifact had done to him, it was only a matter of time before it began to affect them all. She stood by Sam's bedside, watching his slow, shallow breathing. Whatever was happening to him, whatever had happened to the Xylons, she was going to find a way to stop it. She couldn't let him slip away. She couldn't let the artifact take anyone else. She would do whatever it took to find a way to reverse it. The crew wasn't going to give up. Not yet. But with every passing moment, it was becoming clearer. If they didn't find a solution soon, they would all be caught in the same trap. The artifact had already begun rewriting their biology, and there was no telling how far it would go before they lost everything.